Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We were in a closed session meeting of council where we discussed a number of items. With one that was added. The first was labor relations or employee negotiations, Kingston Fire and Rescue. Second was a proposal pending disposition of land by the municipality, 261 Weller Street. The third, a proposal pending acquisition of land by the municipality, 1318 Princess Street. D, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees and labor relations or employee negotiations, Oakwood Preschool Center. And we added one item, which was advice subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, the J.K. Tetz Center. So I'd ask for a motion to rise from the committee of the closed session. Deputy Clerk.
Moved by Councillor Osanik, second by Councillor Schell, that Council rise from Committee of the Whole, closed meeting without reporting.
Called a question on that. Please vote. That carries. Thank you. I'll just say at the beginning of the meeting, we've had some criticism might be a strong word, but some concerns from viewers of our council meetings about the manner in which the information is displayed on the screen, the results of our votes on the new voting system. And I can tell the public that I'm trying to set up a meeting with Cogeco to try to iron out the details as to how that will be displayed so that it will be more accessible to the public. So with their patience, we are working on that. Approval of the addeds. We did deal with the one item that was the closed meeting council portion, but then there's the balance of the addeds. Will somebody move those? Councillor, or Deputy Mayor Patterson and Councillor Neal. We have added delegation, Mr. Philip Brown. We have a report 68, a second item on that, a second item for the information reports, and a new motion moved by Councillor Neal and Councillor Schell. So I'll call to question on those, please. Please vote. That carries. Disclosure of potential pecuniary interest. Is there any to declare at this time? Councillor Schell.
Thank you, Mayor Garrettson. I, Liz Schell of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Kingston, declare my pecuniary interest in the matter of Report 67, Part J, Revert Munier Common Park, as my partner is working with Len Corcoran Construction. Thank you.
Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to declare a conflict of interest related to the May 7, 2013 Council meeting, number 2013-13, Committee of the Whole closed meeting 1C, a proposed or pending disposition of land by the municipality, 1318 Princess Street. As my employer, Kingston Cooperative Homes, Inc., is located on an adjacent lot and in the future may or may not have an interest in the property or any potential development on that property. Thank you.
Councillor Downs.
Thank you, Worship. I, Rick Downs, the Corporation of the Council of the City of Kingston, declare my potential pecuniary interest in Committee of the Whole closed session item 6, in that I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the proponent.
Anybody else? Okay. Next we have presentations, of which there are none. Delegations. We have the one delegation. Councillor Glover, you'd like to be a delegation too?
No, but I'm advised by the clerk that this is the appropriate time to bring forward a motion asking that we add a delegation. Moved
sure.
by myself.
Can you do that right after we do the first one?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the first delegation is Mr. Philip Brown, who will speak to Council in regards to Clause 2, Report 68, received from the CAO budget amendments for the TET Center for Creativity and Learning. Mr. Brown, welcome. And as all of our delegations, you have 5 minutes. I'll warn you when you're about. Pardon me? Don't press the button yet. When the first word comes out of your mouth, that's when I start the clock.
Mayor, I've been a supporter of the TET for over 20 years as a volunteer, an artist, and a fundraiser. And it was a lonely night just over a year ago when I stood up here as the only voice suggesting that we take a more austere and modest approach to the TET renovation. You know, promises were made that night that the budget was correct, all was in order, all contingencies had been examined, and that we would not go over budget. And many of you accepted those promises and took a leap of faith and supported the budget. And already, not a third of the way into the project, we're nearly 15% over budget. And council's being asked for their $1.7 million tonight. Now, how could we possibly be surprised that a nearly 200-year-old building that was built on the waterfront with its foundation nearly underwater has got structural and soil issues, particularly in light of the specialized techniques that are available today for drilling, for x-raying, for ultrasound. And in fact, council was asked in July of 2009 for $500,000 to do building and structural investigations to ensure, as the council said at the time, that the city wouldn't have any surprises when it renovates this historic building as it did with the Grand Theatre. That was 2009. If you look up here, you can see our old TET building from this is 1940s picture, and you can see that there's no land around it. It was literally built on and under the water. So what other surprises await as we go forward? Because I know that there's a long list of interior and exterior changes to come, and no doubt more risk and more challenges. If we look now at the current situation, we've taken the crane out of the picture, but this is a picture from the waterfront a few days ago. This is the Bader building in its final form. There's the Stella Buck building in her final form, and there's our beautiful TET building in its current form. Personally, I think the symmetry is beautiful. If we come across to King Street, you can see the massing of the Bader building, the old Domino Theatre on the left, and of course the TET building here, and its proximity to the main entrance of the Bader Center, making a nice little couch, if you will, for the Bader Center or studio armchairs. So what's coming? Well, what's coming is a 100-foot high tower made of steel and glass, looking out from the water. What's coming is a massive glass and steel and stone entranceway, butting up against the main entrance here, and then many, many other renovations, full roof structure, interior surfacing, windows, etc. Now, you may be told tonight lots of things. You may be told that that 100-foot tower that's got to be gale-proof won't cost much more than putting a roof on the building. You may be told that it's too late to turn back now. You may be told that the business plan will flounder without the tower room. Or you may be told the story that, oh goodness, if we don't do this and spend this money, Queens might not advance their money to us because the project might not get finished. Well, we all want to finish the project, but I don't think we want to finish it just at any cost. But whatever you hear tonight, it's important to verify those statements as facts with an independent and unbiased perspective. The TET will soon be sitting beside the greatest piece of advertising money can buy, an $80+ million beautiful building that will attract people from all over the world by the thousands. There's no need for our beautiful TET to compete with flashy gilding. We just need to turn on the lights and open the doors and let the people come in. Now, I showed a little more modest version of the TET here. Excuse me. There we go. Where we don't have a tower. We just bookend the beautiful Bader Center with the TET as she is today, and we trim down this entranceway to something a little more modest that fits in the context of the Bader Center. That might save $500,000 or more without getting into any of the other details. So tonight I'm asking council for one very simple thing, and that's take a breath. Defer this motion for another $1.7 million and hold on the decision to increase it for now. And I suggest that council get an outside, unbiased, line-by-line opinion about this budget and this project, and have someone who's not vested in this project come back and tell us how to save $1.7 million. And if they come back in 2 weeks or 3 weeks and say, you know what, as from an unbiased perspective, we can't do it, well then we have our validation of these statements of fact that we need.
You have 30 seconds.
And I thank you for your time. And if anyone cares to ask any questions about my thoughts on further budget savings, I'd be more than happy to address those. Council, thank you.
Are there any questions from council? Councillor Hutchison? Councillor Hutchison?
So if it was up to you, you're a businessman. So if it was up to you, what tact would you take to save the money?
Well, all I can give you is sort of the private sector perspective. And if I sent one of our teams out on a project and they come back this quickly, 15% over budget, and this is just private sector, there'd be an immediate review of leadership, but there's also be an immediate arm's length review of the details to figure out, okay, is the leadership right or wrong? But more importantly, how do we get where we are and how do we get the heck out of it? And money is scarce these days. Money's precious, and getting into problems and projects needs to be anticipated in advance. This is the only room that I'm aware of that you can walk in and not be accountable for budget overruns. If this was a bank or a creditor, they'd say, gee, sorry, Mr. Brown, you've got to figure it out. Maybe you can't have copper, you've got to have roofing shingles. Maybe you can't have steel, you've got to have wood. So in the private sector, it's a little more harsh, I think, Councillor. And I get held accountable. My clients, my customers, and our financiers hold us very accountable.
Thank you.
Councillor Osanek.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. In tonight's report, staff are recommending that we take $1 million out of the 1.7 out of our capital reserve fund. How do you feel about using, the contingency capital funds for budget overruns such as this?
Well, I know in the city the funds are separated. You've got general tax revenues and you've got special revenues, but somebody said that $1.7 million is nearly 1% of the expected tax intake for next year from the entire city of Kingston. That's a lot of money, $1.7 million, and there's projects all over this community screaming for money, from subsidized housing to our seniors' care, to our youth at risk, to other historic properties. So in terms of taking money so quickly without a detailed line-by-line, we call it a deep dive in private business, where you dig in with an arm's length perspective and figure out, how do we not do that? Let's at least look at how not to do it before we decide to do it. And if we don't like what the not to do it is, then we can always come back in a month and say, okay, let's do it. But to come in 1 hour, write a check for $1.7 million based on a report from, and listen, I have a lot of admiration for Councillor Beach and Rob Crothers and the team who are very passionate about Kingston. They're very passionate about their work and their project and put a lot of their life into it. Doesn't mean we have to agree on all the facts. But when you're, there's a great saying, the truth is best seen by the eye unclouded by longing, which means you can't edit your own work. When I'm deeply vested in a project, it's very hard to get my head out of it and accept input from unbiased sources. It's the human condition, and I think we need to assist staff with whether they like it or not, because we don't always like to have our work inspected, but we need to assist staff to validate what they're saying, question their assumptions, challenge the reality, and take a very hard look. This is a lot of money, $1.7 million, and I haven't heard one sacrifice coming yet. It wasn't like, well, look, we made this $500,000 worth of sacrifices, and we need a little bit more money. It's just, well, there's no sacrifices, and we need the money. So, Councillor, I feel strongly that we just shouldn't be dipping into reserves that really are for utilitarian purposes, from what I understand. I believe one of the councillors here pressed many years ago to get this 1% into a general fund of revenues to deal with projects that are for the greater good of the entire community. And frankly, I'm a big lover of this project, but it's serving a very narrow sliver of our community.
Councillor Glover.
Thank you, Mayor Gerritsen. First question, I'm not certain that I heard correctly, but did I hear the delegate, Mr. Brown, say that the Queen's project was $80 million?
I believe it's going to be in the $80 million range by the time it's done.
I'll confirm with staff. My recollection is...
Okay, we're here to ask questions
Yes,
of the delegate.
I understand that, but my recollection is that the percentage overrun on the TET is significantly smaller than the one for Queen's.
Okay, so we're
Second
here to ask
question.
Questions.
You've identified, Mr. Brown's identified himself as a businessman. I wonder, I don't know if in his business experience he's had the opportunity to be in charge of comparable projects. He has suggested we should take a pause for 2 or 3 weeks. In his experience with other comparable projects, does he have any experience of what costs might be associated with that sort of slowdown?
So two questions. My myself and my family have been involved in many projects in Kingston, in the tens and tens of millions of dollars of renovations, including the Prince George Hotel across the street, the incredibly complicated Bages Brewery at the corner of Wellington and Bay Street, which we spent over a decade restoring and renovating to the, I must humbly say, to the award-winning luster that it is today. We renovated the Heritage Brewers Cottages behind the, across from OHIP, behind the brewery. And recently we won an award for improving Kingston life with the 4 heritage townhomes we built on that property. So that's a short list. So yes, I have been deeply involved with my own financial money involved in projects that are very complicated, where we had partners and bankers holding us accountable to every dollar along the way. And I can tell you, if we came back with a 15% override, those projects just would not get done. So in terms of the second question, which is how long does it take to do a review, there's a great story about the Woolman Rink in New York, in Central Park, that was 6.5 years and many, many millions of dollars over budget. Many of you may remember this back in the 80s, and Donald Trump convinced Harvey Koch from there at the time to give him 1 month to get it done. Sorry, give him 3 months to get it done. And Donald got it done in 3 months with no extra money. And the way he did it is he made it a community project. He brought all the stakeholders into a room like this and said, look, we've got this challenge, folks. We've got goodwill in the room. I mean, every supplier, every contractor, everybody involved with this project wants goodwill with the City of Kingston, especially in light of the way we make decisions in letting contracts today, which is now more of a moderate approach, including money and goodwill and community involvement, so it's not just money anymore. So everybody wants to have goodwill. So if you threw it to me, in 30 days, I'd first of all call a couple of colleagues who are involved in this business in Kingston, and there's many in our city who've done phenomenal renovations like this, very complicated. We'd pull all the stakeholders into a room for an afternoon. We get busy, and we come back out with some suggestions, at least, as to how to get there. You may not like the suggestions. It may be too harsh, maybe too much sacrifice, but it definitely can be done. And it just comes back to the notion that I don't have a bias. I mean, build a tower, don't build a tower. Well, what's it look without a tower? It doesn't matter to me as an unbiased person. I'd go at it very sort of in a very sterile manner to say line by line by line by line, what can we do here? Wood or glass, steel or whatever, patio stones or grass, copper or shingles, tower or no tower, entrance, no, I mean lighting, every doorknob, we'd look at every single line. And on this project, if we couldn't find $1 million or $2 million in savings at an approach like that, I'd be stunned. And it wouldn't take 6 months. I mean, it'd be done in a couple of weeks. So whether you hire a consultant, which I know the city has its processes, or whether you get some community volunteers, this is a legacy moment for this council, folks. A legacy moment. This is a huge opportunity to set the tone for the future and hold people accountable for the promises they make, to force project managers to do their homework in advance and leave enough, several councillors said to me, well, maybe if we did that, we wouldn't get any projects done because the budgets would be too high, and so we do this, we'll plead for forgiveness later. I mean, I was a young man who did that. But we live in a real world with real transparency today.
Okay.
And so to answer your question quickly is, that's how I do it. I make it a community project, I'd bring people together, and I'd make this a legacy moment that we can
Thank you.
in the future.
Councillor Neal.
Thank you. And I appreciate that besides being a community member and a business person, you are also, and have been for some time, active in the arts community. And one of my concerns, and I'm just going to ask if you share the same concern, is that we have, I think, an excellent opportunity, and our goal was to create affordable space for the arts community. Do you feel that criticism about cost overruns may in fact end up creating an atmosphere where people are critical of the arts community when in fact it's not their doing that we're in this situation?
It's a big risk, Councillor. John K. Tett had a vision of a modest gathering place for the artists in the community. And if you think about one of the greatest artistic organizations in the world, Cirque du Soleil, they do their thing in a tent. It's not the building that makes the arts great. It's the arts that make the building great. And this business plan that says we need to turn the artists into fundraisers by holding events there is so folly, it needs to be revisited. the little bit of partying and rental that'll go on there will pale in comparison to the glory we get from the work that the artists do. Frankly, listen, I'm in the catering business. People are not going to hold parties in the tower room. A, there's no parking. B, the distance from street to get there is huge. And C, the competition for that type of business in Kingston is intense, with all the hotels and bars and restaurants that have catering professionals on site in great places. So back to your question, absolutely. I think we need to stick to the vision of a modest gathering place for wonderful artists, and let the art speak for the TET, as opposed to the TET speaking for the art. It's not necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Councillor Glover, you had a motion.
Thank you, Mayor Gerritsen. Moved by myself, seconded, I believe, by Councillor Schell, that bylaw 1 be waived for the purposes of adding, as a delegation, Ms. Patty Petkovich, co-chair for the TET Center for Creativity and Learning, and president of the Kingston Potters Guild, who will speak to CAO Recommend Report 68, Clause 2, the budget amendments for the TET Center for Creativity and Learning.
Thank you for providing that in advance to the clerk so that we could have it on the screen. And that is seconded by Councillor Schell. This motion requires 2/3 of council. Is there any discussion on this? I'll call to question on this. Please vote. That carries. So I would now invite the delegation to come forward. And you as well have 5 minutes.
Good evening. I think the councillors know me. My name is Patty Petkovich. I'm the president of the Kingston Potters Guild and the co-chair of the TET Center for Creativity and Learning. I am here to offer my support for the TET Center for Creativity and Learning. I'm not here tonight to speak about the technical aspects of the construction project. I know that the city staff will address those matters. What I can speak about is how important this building is to Kingston and the impact that the artisans and artists returning to the TET have on this community. You can't get more down to earth than the Potters. After all, we're up to our elbows in it. So are the members of the Lapidary Club with their gemstones, and the spinners and weavers with their natural wools and fibers. These three groups have hundreds of members, and thousands come out for the regular sales we hold. Have any of you tried to find parking at Portsmouth Harbor when Gemstorm is going on? The Kingston School of Dance provides lessons for 400 students of all ages, and Joe Mills Musical Lending Library lends out 500 free musical instruments to many in the community that would not be able to practice or enjoy music otherwise. These are inclusive organizations. These groups and individuals contribute greatly to the cultural vitality of this city. We volunteer in schools. We donate to many worthy charities, including the essential Empty Bowls fundraiser for Martha's Table. When you add in the thousands of people that enjoy theatrical performances at Theatre Kingston or the Salon Theatre, art exhibits from Modern Fuel, and attend Writers' Fest, you can see the impact the future tenants of the TET will have. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Council and City staff for their forward thinking on this project and realizing the positive impact it will have on the whole community of Kingston. Thank you for listening to me this evening.
Are there any questions for the delegation? Thank you very much. Moving on in the agenda, we do not have any briefings. Are there any petitions to present to council? Okay, seeing none. We do not have any motions of congratulations, condolence, sympathy, or speedy recovery. I think the first time. Deferred motions, there are none. Report 67 from the CAO.
It's moved by Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Patterson. The report number 67 from the Chief Administrative.
Would anybody like to separate any of them? Councillor Neal.
C and G, if I might.
Are there any other separations?
I'm sorry, C and F.
Are there any other separations? Yes, Councillor Schell? J? Are there any others? So we'll deal with the balance first. A, B, D, E, G, H, I, and K. And when the clerk is ready, I'd ask to call the question on that. Please vote. That carries. Item C, amendment to license agreement to permit the construction of a skate park in Shannon Park by the community response to neighborhood change. Councillor Neal.
Thank you. I support this motion, and it's great to see community input and community support for it as well, both financial and within the community. The only question I had for the commissioner, and I think I'll be asking this question more frequently as we get into larger ticket items. I'm curious about what portion of that goes towards construction and what portion may go towards external consultants or outside consultants on some of these larger projects, if the commissioner could respond.
Okay, Commissioner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the amount that we are referring to in the report, the $110,000, which is the grant from the Ontario Trillium Foundation, would be entirely allocated to the construction. The design work, we did have to hire a consultant to do the design, has already been covered through the remainder of the funds. There have been other fundraising activities as well that have taken place in the past few years, and the city also has a $200,000 budget that it has already approved back in 2009 for this project.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on this? I'll ask the clerk to call the vote. Please vote. Carries. Item F. Application for assignment of serving sidewalk patio. Diane's Fish Bar on Ontario Inc. at 195 Ontario Street. Councillor Neal.
Yes, and I'll save a question for the next one as well, or ask the same question. I'm just curious, the way I read the report, and perhaps I'm missing something, the 195 Ontario Street Diane's Fish Bar is not taking up a parking space, or it wasn't specifically mentioning that, but the Tommy's restaurant on Princess Street would be taking up at least one parking space. Is that correct?
Commissioner Keach.
Through your worship, so the first one, the Diane's Fish Bar, is basically utilizing the existing patio. I'm guessing a change of ownership or change of name, at least, of the restaurant. So there's no physical change to anything. And then I believe the second question for the next report, it is a new patio, so it will impact parking. but as outlined in the report, Council actually passed a policy in regards to impact of patios on parking on I think, particular Princess Street, and it falls within that policy.
Thank you very much.
Call to question. Oh, Councillor Glover.
Thank you, Mayor Gerritsen. A question, I did a flashback to the report, and a question has come to mind. On page 36, with reference to a communication that had been received with respect to visibility at the intersection, the patio will be constructed as per the approved plans, and no screening will be permitted on the perimeter fencing. Is that an amendment to the agreement which had been in place with the previous
Commissioner
restaurant?
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the amendment with the previous patio owner. I do know that correspondence was sent to this patio operator and basically all patio operators outlining requirements in regards to screening sight lines and whatnot. But I can't specifically say what was in place for the previous patio, unfortunately.
Then, if I may, as a follow-up, perhaps it's a question of enforcement, but I am familiar with this intersection because it is still in Sydenham District, and it wasn't just the screen, gauze sort of screen that probably provided shade at some stage. It was also, in an attempt to provide some decoration, flower planters. And given the angle of the road, the increased height of the flower planters. So is the language here sufficiently open that they too will be excluded as we go forward?
So in the, through your worship, in the correspondence that has been provided by engineering to all patios, it deals with, the planters is one of the items that it deals with in regards to sight lines and whatnot. So I think it will be dealt with differently than it has in the past, and you know the results will be satisfactory to council.
Thank you very much.
Call to question on this one. Please vote now. Carries. Item J, award of contract for Bert Mounier Common Park construction. Councillor, oh yes, Councillor Shell's pecuniary interest. So now we will call to question on this one. Please vote. Councillor Shell, did you sign out? Okay, great, thanks. That's carried. Report 68 from the CAO.
It's moved by Councillor George, second by Councillor Scott. The report number 68 from the Chief Administrative Officer recommend be received and adopted clause by clause.
We have the first clause is with respect to the final tax rates. Call to question on this one. Please vote. Carries. Second is budget amendments for the TET Center for Creativity and Learning. Call to question on this one. Do you want to no. Call to question? Well, does anybody want to speak? Okay. You do want to speak? Okay, Councillor Glover. Please don't vote. Has anybody voted, Mr. No, okay, please, they can't change the system, so just don't push the buttons. You can try to push each other's buttons, but not the buttons on the device there. Councillor Glover.
Thank you, Mayor Gerritsen. If I may, I'd like to ask some questions of staff. Some of the points which perhaps have been raised in the process of the delegation that we've had as well. I'm thinking of the first one. If I remember correctly, and I'm just flipping through the pages, there was a comment about the need to do something with the walls because of seismic concerns. On page 91, the basic structure is required to meet modern seismic codes. I don't understand why this wouldn't have been anticipated, or is this just an example of one of the costs that was anticipated?
Mr. Hugelboss, are you going to be addressing these, or Commissioner Beach?
So I'll start to answer this question. If Peter Hugenboss wants to answer or add, he can. But basically, in terms of the building itself, it was anticipated that we would have to structurally reinforce the building. The current building code requires that we meet current seismic capability in the building. So basically, inside the building, with most heritage buildings, you have to do a whole new steel structure. The walls in this building were the load-bearing, and we've had to replace that with steel structures and reinforce the walls. And then the building itself, it wasn't typical at the time to anchor the building to bedrock. So we did do extensive testing. We did a demolition phase before we awarded the contract for the construction component, and we pulled everything out of the building that we could at that time as well. We did testing to see where the bedrock would be, and the different conditions that we've found is that the bedrock is actually deeper than what was originally in the testing that was done by the geotechnical, and the adjustment has had to have those rock anchors for the foundations of the building go down much deeper, and that means that the whole building has to be readjusted. So those are some of the unanticipated costs. We did do extensive testing prior to the construction. We did do extensive testing while we were in the demolition phase, and we have run into something that was unanticipated by the experts.
Councillor Glover.
Thank you, Mayor Gerritsen. The first delegation suggested that we should take a pause of 2 or 3 weeks and get out sharp pencils and see what we might be able to do. I'd be interested if staff could advise whether they think that's an option or whether they don't think it's an option, and why.
Commissioner.
In terms of going through the project budget, we're here tonight because we know that we can't complete the project within the existing budget, and staff don't have authority to be making amendments to the project once we know that we can't complete the project within budget. We have recommended a budget tonight in order to complete the project on scope, but in terms of looking for cost savings, we have been doing that on an ongoing basis. We have experts in construction that are looking at the schedule, that are also looking at different techniques and are providing advice to the city. And as council is aware, that when we establish contingencies in our budgets, it's not a maximum limit or a minimum limit that we're trying to get to in a project. We try and find cost savings as we go along as well. What we want to ensure that council understands tonight, though, is that we cannot find $1.7 million worth of cost savings without making a major change to this project, which would make us revisit the construction contract. There isn't sufficient items within the budget that we can look at a cost cutting of that measure. If council were to give us the authority to proceed and come back with a list of other items that where we may cut, we could do that, and we've provided some timing on where we might be able to provide those options.
And if I may, as a follow-up on that particular point, changes to the contract, changes to the project would require changes to the contract. Is that the thinking that was behind the statement on page 92 of the package? Project Management Committee have concluded that this, meaning changes, would not be advisable or doable?
Commissioner or Mr. Gubas?
I'm not sure I understand the question in terms of what, maybe if he could repeat it?
Well, the on page 92 of the package, under the heading Value Engineering and Review, the project management staff have reviewed possible changes to the scope or the schedule in order to bring the project within the approved budget. But they and the project management committee have concluded this would not be advisable or doable. And in that paragraph, there's no real further substantiation of that point. In our comments, the Commissioner had said there'd be a problem of reopening the contract. So I'm asking, is it that sort of challenge which underlay the that statement there?
So the budget request that's before you tonight, the project committee has looked at any possible changes that may have been brought forward, and that would have been our first preference, would be to bring forward changes that could bring the project within budget. We have not found those at this point. And in terms of altering the schedule and looking at changes, we have gone through some of that process now. If Council would like to see an additional list that would also include changes to scope, we would have to review the construction contract as well as our financial agreements and come back with a detailed description of which of those we would recommend or that Council could pick from.
And wonder if the Commissioner could elaborate on why that would not be a desirable option.
To begin with, in terms of the analysis of the magnitude of the $1.7 million, we know that from our look at the construction project that there are no big items or even a collection of small items that can come up to that amount. And we did look at that when we brought this report forward, if there could be something that would bring the project within budget. You know, the question was asked, do we look at other changes through the process to try and reduce costs? And the answer to that is yes. But we're providing you an estimate of budget to completion of the project, and that's our best estimate. We've had independent construction companies that specialize in contracts and construction as well look at it, and they have not come up with items that would reduce that estimate.
And I think one final question, would there be any advantage in trying to spread this out? For example, implementation of the cultural master plan and implementation of express bus service were both, at the decision of Council, spread out over a period of time. Would there be any advantage to spreading this out?
Is that a CAO question? CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So if the question relates to spreading out the contract over a longer period of time, I think the answer to that is it would be difficult to do that. There's time constraints both in the contract and with respect to completion of the work and lining up with some completion with the Bader Center at Queens. If the question has to do with spreading out the financial implications of that, we do consider cash flow as a phased approach, and this would be factored into our reserve fund models as on a go-forward basis, which could impact or slow other potential projects that would be on stream for future year budgets.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Neal.
Yes. Just one question of staff, and then I do have a comment regarding this. Being the councillor from Williamsville, I'm well used to the number of boreholes that go into projects prior to development, and the fact that site condition is a report required before a building permit. If I could just ask staff, either the CAO or the commissioner, if they're comfortable in stating that the city indeed did their due diligence in seeking that information, just as any private developer might.
So in terms of the due diligence that's been applied to this project, as I've mentioned, we've hired professional firms to manage the construction component. So there's a consultant group that involves structural engineers, architects, geotechnical that have provided the information. We've also had some independent review of that information as well, and we've also had, again, an outside project management firm review the project and review where we're at with respect to two components, one the schedule and the other with the actual process that we're using to do the work, and they both have provided recommendations which we're following. So in terms of the proper qualifications, the proper due diligence, yes, we did do proper due diligence in this project, and there was a demolition phase where we did that as well. And going forward, we will ensure to keep those staff on board, some of them independent from city staff that will review.
Thank you. And the comment kind of is an extension of the question that I asked the delegation earlier. I fall into the trap sometimes of reading some of the comments that follow some of the articles in the WIG, and which is always a mistake, I realize, because that isn't the representative voice of Kingstonians. But it's really unfortunate. I mean, we live in a heritage city that benefits from being having such a diverse culture. We are a creative community. It's one of our great strengths. And I just implore that members of the community, if you're upset at a cost overrun, blame council, because we're the ones that make the decision. Blame staff if you wish, because they indeed are the people who we empower to do what council asks. But don't, please, blame the arts community for this. All the arts community has asked for, and all the plan calls for, is affordable, creative space so people in the arts community can indeed have a place to create and to sell their wares. And I really, really hope, I mean, blame, I don't know for sure how I'm about to vote, but blame me if people are upset with that vote, but don't blame the arts community who are just looking for creative space. And the city's responsibility is to provide that creative space for them. So, thank you.
Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you, Your Worship. As I read this report, the two main expenses have to do with problems with the foundations and with soil removal or remediation. So my question is it possible to even go ahead with the project if we don't do these elements? Is it even avoidable that we could not do these things?
Commissioner.
The two components that are in front of council tonight, there isn't a way for us to not do those. It's a cut site, so we have to take fill away from the site, and as soon as we move that fill off site, we have to pay to do that. And the structural piece, again, it's bringing the building up to the current building code standards, and once we start to renovate a building, we have to bring up to the current standard for a heritage building, but we still have to complete the work. So council were to say that we weren't going to complete the work, we couldn't occupy the building, and we'd have to look for some sort of other solutions.
Thank you. That sort of does segue into my next question was, does staff have any sense of how much of the expenditure on this 182-year-old building is due to bringing it up to modern building standards?
I'm not sure exactly what the question is. I mean, the main component of this budget, we haven't put a lot of frills into the budget in terms of finishes. It's an industrial grade building, and we have the tenants who are paying to fit out their space. So the city's basically dealing with the shell of the building, the structural wall components, and preserving the buildings that are there. So the vast majority of those costs, and I can have the technical people look at that and provide it to council, but the vast amount of those costs are coming from the structural and making the building last for another 100 years.
Thank you. I think that does answer my question. I have one other question. It was raised about the issue of the tower on the J.K. Tett Center building. And this may be a question to, well, it's definitely the staff, might be the clerk. It seems to me that we voted specifically on the tower, if memory serves me, and whether to go ahead. And so that would be reconsideration, or would it? That's the question. And if it's reconsideration, it's a whole other ballgame, as everybody here knows. So
Are you asking me a question?
I didn't think of this question until I got here, because I probably should have asked the clerk, to be fair, but it does seem to me that the tower would not be an option, even if we said don't do it.
I don't know if we talked about the tower, if we voted on the tower specifically, or if we voted on different elements. It's irrelevant, because what we passed was everything, the whole entire package, and we passed a dollar amount associated to that. So if this doesn't pass and the project can't go forward, that is just a consequence of the fact that this doesn't pass. So to remove the tower or to remove any element of it, in my opinion, requires a reconsideration because of the fact that we already passed it as one complete package. Okay, so any removing or changing elements to it would definitely require a reconsideration, would be my ruling on it. But having said that, simply just voting down this request from staff is not a reconsideration.
No, I recognize that, but you did answer my question
Okay.
in talking about all the elements being part of the package, so that was fine. Thank you.
Councillor Osanek.
Thank you, Your Worship. My only concern with approving this 1.7 million additional funding is the opportunity cost compared to the other capital projects. And what we saw last week in our strategic planning sessions was that our capital dollars are, very scarce, and our reserve fund is very finite. And so, a few months ago, we had the report for Artillery Park, 13.6 million, and it had, we were being asked to approve a big overrun for Artillery Park. So what my question is to staff is does staff have any information that Artillery Park might be coming back requesting more funding? Because it's opportunity cost, Your Worship.
Unfortunately, I don't think that that's in order, because this discussion is about this particular item.
Okay.
So in the context of this debate, it's not in order. It's a fair question to ask staff outside of this debate, but it would not be in order at this time.
Okay, well, now everyone in the room has heard that's my concern, opportunity cost. And thank you.
Ms. Kennedy, as our city treasurer, the request, 700,000 is being requested from the Environmental Reserve Fund. How much money is in that fund right now?
Your Worship, we have about $3 million.
2 million?
About $3 million.
3 million?
Yes.
How often do we go into it, or have we gone into it?
We go into it periodically for this type of environmental thing. We also use that fund to finance some of the projects we've done, like the solar panels, and then we take the debt funds out of that. So there's about $1 million goes into that fund each year.
Each year, $1 million?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
on average, how much do we spend? Assuming that we weren't taking this 700.
Yep.
What have we spent typically?
Typically around $1 million.
$1 million, okay.
Yep.
And in terms of the capital, the other $1 million is being requested from the Municipal Capital Reserve Fund. How much money is in that reserve fund right now?
That fund we try to keep up around maybe between $13 to $15 million
13 and
balance.
15?
Yes.
And what do we spend on average? Assuming we didn't spend this $1 million, like what do we spend?
We would probably spend in that same area, somewhere between maybe 12 to 14 million
A year?
each year. Yes.
How much do we contribute to that a year?
We have the 1% capital levy, which now is about 22 million that goes in there.
The entire 1% goes in there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Reitzel?
Thank you, Mayor Gerritsen. I'd like to talk about something in regards to this project that I don't think we've even considered this evening yet. We have an opportunity to do something else besides vote yes or no for the extra money for the TET Center. We have a chance to change the perception and opinion of public projects. It's always been out there that every time we start a public project, whether it's federal, provincial, or municipal, we just get dragged right through the knothole for more money all the time. There's overruns, they just soak us for all we're worth. And even though they're telling us that this particular project, they found something that they hadn't expected, I don't know even if I can accept that. If I consider just thinking about my own personal finances, I don't have all these reserves to go and raid all the time because, well, somebody missed something or we're not sure who we should be litigating against and all these kind of things. We found out now we can't afford the Cadillac, so let's try and go for the smart car in terms of what we have here with the TET Center. I would like to challenge staff to find out what they can do in terms of doing whatever it is they have to do to get in on budget, because it's just a deja vu with the Grand Theater all over again. And that one, we know where it ended up and where it started. If it was my house, my money, that's the way I try to look at these things. Not just the fact that we can always dip in because the taxpayer's there at the end of the day. I think people are tired, they're weary of that. I think it's time to show them that we can take a stand, that we don't need to be, every time we take on a public project, we say we're going to do it for X amount and it ends up X times 3 kind of thing. As a taxpayer, they don't have the well to go to like we do, and I think it's time to eliminate that kind of thinking. And I think we have the chance to do that tonight. And that's precisely why I'm going to vote no, that we don't put any more money into this, because I think it's time to really sit down and prove to the taxpayer that we can say no, that we're going to try and remove that perception out there of public projects, that we can't let this continue to go on all the time. And tonight I'm taking a stand and saying no. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Schell.
Thank you, Mayor Gerritsen. A few questions. Currently, there is a delay in this project until the spring of 2014 instead of December. Is this going to be an opportunity for staff to look at the kind of changes that we've been discussing, that it will be an ongoing plan to try to save money since we're already extending the length of time this is going to take?
Commissioner.
In terms of the timelines, part of the additional time is to mitigate against the risk of trying to schedule too many things happening on the site at once. So we have had independent experts look at that, and we've gone through the schedule with the contractor to find out ways that we can change that schedule without costing the city or the contractor money. I just would like to indicate that every quarter we have a report that goes to council, and every quarter we close projects and we return money to the Capital Reserve Fund for our projects, which we try to that when we get a budget approved, it's not a minimum limit that we're trying to go for. We try and manage these projects through to the end, and there will have to be dedicated a number of staff on board with this project that will have to look at ways to try and reduce costs. If council were to give us some direction to go back and look further again, we certainly will try to do that. We've done that on other projects as well, where we've returned contingencies to that capital reserve fund. If we don't need the money, we don't spend it. Our challenge tonight is that we've had an independent expert look at an estimation to the end, and they provided estimation that staff have no authority to approve change notices unless we have authority from council to spend what we view to be the projected project cost to the end. But that doesn't mean that we won't continue to look for cost reductions.
Thank you. This next one is about the tenants. I know that they've had to incorporate and as a group, and they've all sort of been dispersed around the city. Can they stay where they are this longer period of time? I know they've been told it would be December, and now it'll be a few months later. Is this going to cause any difficulty for any of the tenants in their housing?
Commissioner, or Mr. McCurdy.
The only issue that we're aware of is with the Kingston School of Dance. Their current contract for downtown, or rental agreement for downtown, expires at the end of March, and their landlord has been unwilling to give them an extension on that. So we are looking for alternative space for them for April and May.
It's good to hear. Thank you. And has there been a need to change the administration on the site? Has the city hired some specialist or anyone? Is there somebody on site pretty much all the time from the city to sort of make sure that there are no surprises, or that they catch things really, really early?
Mr. Huguemos?
Through our consulting architectural firm, our engineering sub-consultants to them, as well as our own city staff, there's adequate coverage on-site inspecting the works as they happen.
So you do feel that there's adequate inspection on a constant basis? Thank you. I will be voting for this. Again, as many have said, somewhat reluctantly, because this was a shock, but it's also, I think, an incredibly important project for the city of Kingston. This whole thing started many years ago now, and basically the tenants will be coming back to the space that they occupied before. And the way it turned out was not tenant-driven. There were a number of other factors that drove this to be the renovation that it is today. And I think it's a very important piece of the day-to-day activity of the arts groups in the city of Kingston. Thank you.
So just in terms of procedure, if this fails, can you let me know what happens procedurally, like just so we understand what we're voting on?
I'm not sure who you were asking the question of,
sorry,
but in terms of the project, we don't have authority to approve change notices if we know we aren't within the budget.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge for staff. If
No,
council doesn't approve this motion and or doesn't give authority for staff to continue with the project while we do something else, we'd have to bring a report back as quickly as we could, and we'd have to go through options for council what to do, whether with the contracts.
Okay, thank you. So please vote. Oh, you do? Okay. Would it? And I don't have anybody else on the speakers list. Is there anybody else that has not spoken? Councillor George?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've heard some interesting comments this evening, and I'll go back to what Mr. Brown said earlier when he mentioned about members of council asking the question last time that we were dealing with this particular project, if this would be the end of it and we wouldn't be seeing any further requests coming forward, and the answer I got was yes, and I was glad to hear that because I said I would not support any additional funding. What I'd like to know, I know that the commissioners talked about some projects, and I'm just wondering, are there any other engineering related projects to some of our historical buildings, or any other projects that could be deferred in order to allocate some of those funds to this project at this time? Is there anything out there that we could give reconsideration to?
That's very close to Councillor Rosanik's question of opportunity costs, but Commissioner?
Yes, we could look at our list, and we do try and budget within envelopes, particularly for the heritage buildings, so that we're not taking on too many things at once. So we certainly could come back with a list and look at deferrals of other things in future budgets to make sure that we don't surpass.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciated the question that Councillor Neal asked about due diligence. But due diligence, I mean, my interpretation of due diligence, that of Councillor Neal's, that of Mr. Brown's, or anyone else, they could all be quite different depending on the project in which you're working on. And so I guess the challenge has been whether, in fact, these sub-trades did the due diligence that was asked of them by city staff. So that leads to my next question. When city staff acquired the, I guess it was the architectural firm or whatever firm it was that took the lead on this, did the city actually provide a set of specifications that they felt they had to follow, or was that basically up to the sub-trade to do what they felt was appropriate in relationship to this particular project?
Commissioner?
So in terms of the process that we followed, we did hire an architect's firm that created the specifications for the contract, and they went through in some areas quite detailed specifications, and it was particularly for that building. So the specifications that were prepared were done so by a consulting group that was hired by the city.
Okay. You know, in a sense, I do agree with Councillor Reitzel. I mean, this is somewhat a little bit deja vu in relationship to what myself and Councillor Downs of the day went through with the Grand Theatre. And I know we've heard the comment that, you know, the Grand Theatre came within budget, but the fact still remains there were additional budget requests made of council at that time, which covered some of these unforeseen costs over and over again, and that's why it continued to balloon in costs. I appreciate the fact that you know, it's been mentioned there may be some other projects that can be looked at, and I certainly think that that is worthy of asking staff to do. There has to be accountability in this. I don't know where it's going to come, but you know, we continually with some of our major projects have been asked for these huge amounts of money. I mean, we're not talking $100,000, $200,000. I mean, we're talking $1.7 million here. And, you know, I've had the messages from some engineering firms in town and others that, you know, have a list of questions should be asked and so on. Well, I'm not going to get into that because that's, you know, I know staff won't have those answers. But the fact is, you know, I felt that we finally had a project that we had done our proper due diligence on, and that we had a costing for, and that we felt comfortable in supporting. That's why we did, because we all support the arts, and we want to see this site become the beautiful site that it can be. But at the end of the day, there has to be accountability, and it all starts right here in this room, because, I mean, the fact is the buck stops here. Yes, we make the decisions on the financing, but we make that based on reports that are provided to us, because none of us are qualified to be the ones to go out there and do that. And for me, you know, this is kind of the straw that's broke the camel's back finally for me. And I'm just as I said to one councillor the other day when I met with him on Friday, I mean, it just sickens me that this continues to happen.
About 30 seconds.
So I'm not going to support this. I would prefer that staff, even though there are some risks attached to it, that staff do go back and come back with a reporting to council to give us some potential options to look at. I don't think it's fair that we give up another $1.7 million on this, and I stand on the fact that there has to be some accountability.
Councillor Towns.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't want to really be painted into a corner as someone who is frivolous with taxpayers' dollars. I don't think anybody around this horseshoe wants to be painted into that corner. What has happened with this particular project is that we had studies done on the site, and based on the assumptions from those studies, we moved forward. We signed contracts. The contracts that we signed have hired sub-trades. We have a relationship with Queens. Queens is in the process of getting money from the federal government to complete their side of the project. We have agreements that we have entered into. And when it comes to accountability, we have to be accountable to those people who we have entered into contracts with. Now, I have grave concern about the first assumption that was made, that the foundation was okay. And somewhere along this process, someone said, go ahead. The foundation's okay, go ahead with the project. And I think that if we want to be accountable, and if we want to be responsible, and if we want to take stands, then we should do that with the people who are responsible for making that decision. So at this particular point, though, we have to be very careful in terms of making a decision that is going to effectively stop the project. And what's going to happen to the existing contracts, what's going to happen to Queens, all of those things that have been set in place. I share the same concerns. I think Councillor George mentioned that. I share the same concerns. But we're in a situation where we have to move forward with the project to continue it to completion. And once it's done is the time to look seriously at processes, at what happened, especially with the foundation. Like I'm not an expert, but I bought a house before, and the first thing that you check when you buy a house, or before you renovate a house, you check the foundation. And somewhere along the line, there was an assumption made that everything's okay. Decisions were made based on that. And now we're in a situation that we have to go back to square one to spend that extra money. I don't like it either. I swim at Artillery Pool. I don't like it either. But I think the responsible thing to do is to continue with the project, and after all is said and done, go back and look to see where the mistakes have been made, and then look for the accountability. But I think to take a stand or to say, I've had enough of this, and let the emotion of the issue be brought first forward without the rational and reasonable approach of what we need to do from simply a legal perspective, then I think we need to make the right decision here. And, you know, if you want to pillory me as being someone who's frivolous with property tax dollars, you go ahead. But I think I'm speaking in a reasonable and rational way on this project to get the project done, and then go back to square one to see where the problem started, and then ask for accountability. But we've got contracts signed, we've got Queen's University who's expecting federal money, we have a number of things that are involved in this that make it a very complicated from a legal perspective. And then if we say no tonight, the dominoes are going to start to fall. So it has, I think, I'm glad Councillor Neal brought it up I'm glad that Councillor Neal brought it up that this has nothing to do with the Arts community whatsoever. It has everything to do with us looking to see what happened to that foundation in the beginning and follow up in a very serious way. But that shouldn't prevent us from making a sensible decision tonight with regard to the project.
Anybody else hasn't spoken? Okay, please vote now. That carries. That carries. Item 3 is the City Pound Service request for proposals. Okay, I'll call the question on this. Okay, you got to start putting your hands up when I bring it up. Councillor Sanik.
Thank you, Your Worship. 5 minutes. Okay. First, I just wanted to say thank you very much to staff for having one of the requirements in the draft RFP being that T61 is going to be prohibited. If anyone doesn't know T61, a quick Google will tell you that it's banned in the United States, it is allowed in Canada, and I really appreciate that you're putting that in the draft RFP. Thanks very much. I have a question about the records, and I was just trying to find the page when you almost called the question, Your Worship. For the records, here we go. So it's on page 111, and it's item 8A, the animal log. I just wondered when we're requiring the service provider to provide the animal log, can we have that mean, because it's kind of ambiguous in the wording, can we have that mean that they keep a record of where the animal came from? So, the address or the location, if it's, such and such park, or failing that, at least the cross street. I just wondered if that's possible, because I think that data will be really important for, to interpret the data in the responsible pet ownership program that we're trying to implement. So do you, could that be part of the animal log? And if so, do you need us to actually put that wording as an amendment, or can you just take it as that point?
Thank you. Can I ask somebody to please shut that door? Thank you very much. Mr. Willing.
Thank you, Your Worship. That would be not requiring any further direction. We would definitely be including that as a requirement as well. It serves a number of purposes, and we very much endorse that idea.
Great, thank you so much. I know that the Kingston Humane Society at one time, they did an analysis of where the locations were, and we saw that Rideau Heights was the #1 area where the stray dogs and cats were coming to the pound. So, if we could keep a log ongoing, that would be terrific. Great, thank you. And I have another question. So, the pound contract, the length of the term we're proposing is going to be 5 years. And I just wondered, since the RPOP, the working group, it hasn't even started meeting yet, right? If there were any recommendations coming out of that working group that could, be asking pound service provider to, do something, something that right now is not in the RFP. Does the city have enough flexibility to introduce some of those RPOP recommendations, or would we have to wait 5 years in order to implement any recommendations that, could influence the pound services? So I'm just thinking, I know one of the things we're talking about is microchipping, and we're going to be talking about spay and neutering. So if anything like that would to come forward to our pound service provider, I'm just hypothetically, 5 years just seems to be a long time since the working group hasn't even had its first meeting.
Mr. Willing.
Yeah, there's no question that some of the issues could perhaps be worked into a contract, but there would also be other issues that would have to wait the duration if it was not an amenable cost for an extra item to be included or to be included for free. Then you're correct that the 5 years would create a bit of a hurdle.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Thanks very much. I just want to propose just a couple of amendments.
Okay,
so
you have 2 minutes, and 10 seconds remaining.
So I have to do 3 amendments in 2 minutes, Your Worship?
And 10 seconds.
Okay, so the very first one is the clerk has it. It's Exhibit B on page 110, and it's specification 6B, and it's talking about the large portable crates. The crates come in different sizes, and what's most important is, you know, what it has to provide the cat, such as it should be big enough for a cat litter box, feeding dishes, and sleeping area. Because I have seen portable cat crates where the cat's only sleeping area is inside the litter pan, just because the size isn't big enough. So this is an amendment I'm proposing if there is a seconder, and it's just to include those 3 specific things that have to be provided for this large portable crate.
Seconded by Councillor Neal. Anybody on the amendment? Okay, I'll call to question on the amendment. On the amendment, Councillor Hutchison? Okay, a question?
My question is, this work is done by the Humane Society now. What provision do they supply at this time? Do we know?
I don't know if anybody among staff, do you know the answers to this, Mr. Willing?
I can't say that staff are fine with this requirement.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
That staff are fine with this requirement?
You cannot say that staff are fine with it? Is that what you're saying? I just couldn't hear you.
No, I wasn't going to say that at all.
Oh, I didn't hear you probably. Sorry, could you repeat what you said?
Yeah, I was going to say that that would be acceptable to staff to have that requirement added.
Thank you. So I'll call the question then. Please vote. That carries. Councillor Stanek, you have 1 minute and 28 seconds.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. My second one is...
On a point of order, please, Mayor Garrettson?
Yes. What's the
14.10. A member of council may direct a question to a member of staff on the matter under debate by going through the chair. The member does not lose the right to speak to the issue by asking staff questions, but if the questions count against the 5 minutes, then the member is losing the right to speak.
Sorry, could you repeat? I don't know what you're saying.
With respect to how much time Councillor Stanek has left.
Yes.
14.10.
Let me just find that. Read along together. Oh, I have the committee. Mr. Clerk, could you provide me with the procedural bylaw? I have the committee bylaw with me.
14.10. A member of council may direct a question to a member of staff on the matter under debate by going through the chair. The member does not lose the right to speak to the issue by asking staff questions.
Right.
But if the questions count against the 5 minutes, then the member is losing the right to speak to the issue.
No, I don't. I disagree. I would suggest that when you say that the questions are I'm counting the questions as part of the time, and all this says is that the member does not lose the right to speak by asking the questions. So you still have the right to speak.
But if the questions take up the 5 minutes because the individual has a number of concerns, then they don't have the right to speak.
Right, but what this says is a member of council may ask a question, not multiple questions. So yes, if it takes you 5 minutes to ask one question, then you would essentially be giving up your right to speak. But that's never happened yet. So thank you very much, Councillor. So you have 1 minute and 28 seconds. Please proceed, Councillor.
Okay, my next amendment is about the 500 meters of a public transit. So thank you, Mr. Willing, for pointing out that no pets are allowed. But since we know that the majority of stray cats ending up at the pound are coming from Rideau Heights, where 35% of all dwelling units in Rideau Heights are affordable housing. Not everyone has a car. And so it's really important for when pets go missing to make sure you can take transit or a car to the facility to keep checking. If the animal's found, that's when you can then call your friend, your husband, your mother to come pick you up once you've reclaimed the pet. So this is my amendment, and it's just to say that additional weight be given if the service provider that puts forward their submission is within 500 meters of public transit. It's just additional weight given instead of all the same.
Will somebody second that? Councillor Glover? Would staff like to comment on, since you did it the first time, if this poses a problem?
Not so much a problem, except in the report we note that would then exclude the rural area from hosting the pound, the portions of it that are not on the transit service.
It wouldn't exclude it. It would just give more weight to the ones that have,
Okay. And the other issue is that on page 101 of the report, where we lay out the math on the reclaims for cats, so of the 1,190 cats in 2011, there was about 44 that were reclaimed, so that would be a consideration to as well.
So on the motion to amend, okay, I'll call the question on that. Please vote if you haven't. And that carries. So you have just over 30 seconds remaining.
Excellent. Okay. So thank you very much. My next one, and this is the last one in 30 seconds, is what I just heard Mr. Willing say about the length of term of contract. The RPOP working group hasn't even started. And yes, Mr. Clerk, it's the very last one. And it's just that the length of the contract term, page 100.6, be amended to be 2 years with the option to renew for another 2 years. One further, I think, will bring it. It's the very last one. Oh, no, sorry, it is up at the top. There it is, right there. That the length of the contract be amended to be 2 years with the option to renew in 2 years. And then that way, any recommendations coming from the RPOP, if they do involve the service provider, can give it the best chance of being implemented.
Is somebody going to second that one? Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Glover? So this is to change the contract of the term from 5 to 2 with the extension of 2. Mr. Linscott?
I think if council needs to understand some of the implications of that change, and I think the major one would be that if you're looking to test the market to see who might wish to run this operation, they only are guaranteed a 2-year contract, and that may be insufficient for them to make the capital investment required to provide the facility and all the equipment. So I think if you approve this, you're reducing the potential field of service providers.
Thank you. So then I will call the question on this one. Please vote. And that loses. 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Thanks for the time, for the 5 minutes.
You have 4 seconds left. Would you like to use that?
Thank you.
Anybody else on this? Okay, so I'll call the question on the recommendation as amended. We're about to vote. Please vote. That carries unanimously. Next item, next is report 69 from the Planning Committee.
Mr. Mayor, it's my pleasure to present report number 69 from the Planning Committee. I ask that it be received and adopted.
It's moved by Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor Berg. The report number 69 from the Planning Committee be received and adopted.
Would anybody like to separate any of the clauses? Okay, we'll deal with them in their entirety. Items 1 through 4. 1 through 3. No, there's a fourth. No, that's part of 3. Okay. I'll call the question, Mr. Clerk. Please vote. Still waiting on one person to vote. Okay, we got it. Carries. Report 71 from ARC. Who's the chair of ARC?
Would you like to have report 70 from Heritage first?
Yes, I would. Report 70 from the Heritage Committee.
Mayor Garrettson, it's my pleasure to present the report from the special Heritage meeting of late April.
Moved by Councillor Glover, second by Councillor Schell, that report number 70 from the Municipal Heritage Committee be received and adopted.
Would anybody like to separate any of the clauses? So we'll call to question on all 4. Please vote now. Carries. Report 71 from ARC. Who's the chair of ARC?
Councillor Hutchison.
That would be me. It's my pleasure to present the report number 71, the Arts, Recreation, Community Policies Committee for consideration by Council.
It's moved by Councillor Hutchison, seconded by Councillor Schell. The report number 71 from the Arts, Recreation, and Community Policies Committee be received and adopted.
Are there any separations? So we'll deal with them in their entirety. I'll call to question on that. Please vote now. Carries. Report 72 from EITP.
I wish to submit report number 72 from EITP, duly moved and seconded.
It's moved by Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Hutchison. The report number 72 from the Environment, Infrastructure, and Transportation Policies Committee be received and adopted.
Are there any separations? We'll deal with them in their entirety then. Call to question. Carries. Next, we move into Committee of the Whole, of which there are no reports. There's one information report from Step Down Funding. Oh, there's 2, because we had one in the addeds as well. Miscellaneous business. Will somebody move the first one? Moved by Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Glover. And this is to accept the resignation of John Paul Chesarowski, alternate representative from St. Lawrence College Student Association Near Campus Advisory Committee, with regret, and that the following appointments be made: Andrew Oostrom and Lisa Foresta as an alternate member. I'll call to question on that. Please vote. It's carried. Will somebody move the second one? Councillor Berg and Councillor Glover. And that's to receive the resignation of Troy Sherman from the AMS on the Near Campus Neighborhoods Advisory Committee with regret. Call the question. Please vote. Still waiting on one person. Carries. New motions, moved by Councillor Reitzel, seconded by Councillor Neal. This is that, I'm just going to jump to the therefore, if that's right. The site plan control application from Homestead for 725 Highway 15 be bumped up to the Planning Committee. Anybody on this? Councillor Scott?
Thank you, Mayor Gerritsen. I've got a question of staff on the how the process for the Homestead Holdings property for 725 Highway 15, where it is in the process at the moment.
Mr. Bain?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, the public meeting for the application was held in March of this year. So the department is currently working with the applicant to work through technical comments. I'm not sure yet if we've received a second submission on the application, but that's the stage that it's at the moment. So staff's analysis is ongoing. There's not yet actually been a site plan control application submitted for this file yet.
Okay, thank you. So there has been no decision by the Planning Committee and therefore no decision by Council yet on this application?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Therefore, Mayor Gerritsen, I would like to defer this motion, and Councillor George would second it until after Council has made a decision on this application.
After Council's made a decision?
That's right. Council's the final say on it.
After Council's made a decision on
the rezoning.
The rezoning, but prior to a site plan.
Correct.
Does that make sense procedurally, Mr. Bain? I just mean once the rezoning is done, when does the site plan part of it happen?
Your Worship, site plan is a delegated approval under the site plan control, under the delegated approval bylaw. So staff would be in a position to consider site plan control approval anytime after the zoning amendments take effect.
Okay. So site plan gets, the zoning gets approved, and then afterwards the site plan is done.
That is the order, Your Worship, yes.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
But staff won't take that delegated authority. Like, how do we ensure that assuming that's, yes, Commissioner Beach?
I would suggest that Council deal with the issue now, and then we can work on scheduling the bump up request at a Planning Committee meeting, because the site plan, they are done. The zoning has to be approved before we can approve the site plan, but we do process them concurrently. So I think if Council wants it bumped up, we would probably prefer that you bump it up now, and then we know that.
Commissioner Beach, I appreciate that.
With that in mind, then I obviously I'll withdraw that, but I won't be voting for this because it prejudges that the Planning Committee is even going to approve this project. So bumping something up that that prejudges the committee is just premature. So I won't be voting for it.
So you're withdrawing it. Do you accept that as the seconder?
Let's see.
Yeah, the way I view it is that I think it's premature to bump it up. The applicant may even come forward with some changes, proposed changes, given what they heard at the public meeting. Yeah. But we haven't seen those yet. We haven't seen a final report. I think that the whole thing is premature. What's before us. So I would.
So what I want to understand is, are you accepting both of you have to agree to accept the withdrawal of the deferral motion. Do you accept that as the second?
I'll accept the withdrawal, but I'll be voting against the...
Just as a word of caution, though, if you vote again, if this loses, you need a motion of reconsideration to reintroduce it later.
Then in light of that, I think suggests that we follow along with the original and just defer it, which gives the mover and the seconder of the motion the option to bring this forward later.
So you're not withdrawing it?
No, No, let's just defer
And
it.
you're agreeable to that? Okay, so the discussion is to time and place only. Councillor Glover?
With respect to time, I do not support the time after council has dealt with the matter. I think it is timely to give the applicant notice of possible intention.
Yeah, with respect to time, Commissioner Beach, I guess what I was trying to get at with my questions there, I was just concerned, what's the chance that if it's delegated authority and we just end up passing, say that the zoning gets passed, what's to stop, like, how quickly thereafter does the planning department start that site plan? Because if it was 2 days later, we might not get a council meeting in by that point. That's what I'm trying to get at with respect to the timing of it all.
And I may be improperly jumped in with my preference on that, but that was my concern, was that we often, and I'm not saying about this application, but we often process the site plan and the zoning in concurrently. So from a staff perspective, if we haven't been told to bump it up,
okay,
then it just makes the intention clear. And I'm not saying anything about this particular. Mr.
Okay.
Bain has much more detail on where this application is in the process.
Okay. So on the motion to defer, I'll call to question. Please vote when the clerk, please vote now on the motion to defer. It loses. Okay, so what I suggest to make this palatable from a procedural perspective is that we add the words after planning committee. We say that site plan control application from homestead, et cetera, be bumped up to planning committee if, you basically want to say if the zoning is approved after that. Do you follow me? You can't bump up something that isn't in that position yet. Because if the planning application is rejected, then it wouldn't be. So if you want to put in the words after planning committee, if it's pending the approval of the application, would you be? I think it tightens it up a bit more.
Yes, I would consider that friendly.
And the seconder? Okay. Anybody else on this? So I'll call the question.
What was the changed language? Because I heard a couple of versions.
Yeah, I think that, can you go back to that, Deputy? Yeah. So, planning committee, pending the approval, well, sure. Exactly. So, it only gets bumped up if the application's approved. Does that make sense, Commissioner? I hope I'm not just making this more complicated. Did I? Did I make it more complicated?
I understand where council's trying to go with this, because they may not
Well, don't blame it on them, it's just me.
You may not accept the terms of the zoning, so if we go forward with a site plan meeting prior to council confirming the zoning, then they might have to come back with another site plan meeting if they change the details.
You might want to consider.
So I think that's.
You might want to consider just ignoring what I just said.
I can do that.
Opportunity, Councillor Neal, but Councillor Reitzel.
Let's just leave it where we had it with
Okay.
the intent that we put in. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll vote on just the original, please. Please vote now. That carries. So moved by Councillor Berg, seconded by Councillor Scott, that Councillor George be appointed as the emergency designate for the mayor for the period of May 29th to June 4th, as myself, the deputy, and the emergency designate, and the alternate to the emergency designate will all be out of town at a conference. So, Councillor George, providing that you accept this position, we would like to put you in charge. So please vote. That carries. Notices of motion, are there any to present? Oh, right, sorry, there's a motion on the addeds as well. Moved by Councillor Neal, second by Councillor Schell. We need to appoint somebody to serve on the Operating Grants Review Committee as Councillor Neal's not available. Would somebody like to serve on such committee? No one's making eye contact with me.
What was the date they're meeting?
Pardon me?
What is the date that they're meeting?
February. Oh, no. Do you know the date, Councillor Neal?
I believe it's May 25th, Saturday.
May the 25th. Well, I guess it all hinges on Councillor Glover's calendar.
I'm available if no one else is.
Great. I'm going to go with nobody else is, so it's you. So we'll put Councillor Glover in there, and then I'll call to question on this. Call to question. Please vote. That carries. Notices of motion. Councillor Neal.
Yes. Duly moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Osanek. Notice of motion for the May 21st meeting. Whereas EMS service within the City of Kingston is managed by the County of Frontenac and city taxpayers contribute 80% of the operating and capital costs of the County of Frontenac's EMS services, and whereas the county has decided to reduce the complement by 1 ambulance from the Palace Road Station, and further to reduce by 2 FTE paramedics. Therefore, be it resolved that city staff be asked to prepare a brief report to council evaluating these service reductions with input requested from fire and police, and be it further resolved that the county be invited to present a briefing to council to outline their rationale to reduce service at the Palace Road Station.
Thank you. Are there any other notices? Minutes, Mr. Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Scott, second by Councillor Schell, that the minutes of the City Council meeting number 2013-10 held Wednesday, April 3rd, 2013, and City Council meeting number 2013-11 held Tuesday, April 9th, 2013, and reconvened Thursday, April 11th, 2013, and City Council meeting number 2013-12 held April 23rd, 2013 be confirmed.
Please vote when the opportunity comes. Please vote now. Still waiting on one person. Carries. Tabling of documents. Communications, other business. Is there any other business, Councillor Downs?
Thank you, Worship. Just for your information as chair, I can't get back on June 4th to attend a council meeting. So if you're concerned about quorum, I can't make it back because I'm going to the same conference that you are. Secondly, second item that I have under this is there have been in recent, probably the last 2 months, especially in my district and perhaps in Councillor Hutchison's, a large number of used clothing drop boxes that have been placed on brownfields, just slightly on city property, perhaps in areas that are very difficult to enforce. And they're an eyesore, and they are not sponsored by any charity. It's just simply a used clothing drop box. So someone has taken opportunity, and the result is that they're all over the North End, and they are something that is, I think, just an eyesore and should be removed. So I've contacted property standard staff, and I'm at a loss in terms of what I can do about it. And I'm just wondering if can we license them? Can we? Do you need a motion of council? I really need some advice, because we need to get rid of them.
So we'll leave that with staff to follow up.
Yeah, that's great.
With council.
Thanks, yeah.
Perhaps you could email all of council when you find something, Mr. Willie. That is your department, right? It would be. Yeah.
Sounds like they're all over the city. Councillor George just said that there's some in his area as well, and Councillor Sanic. Yeah.
Anybody else on other business? So with that, bylaws.
So it's moved by Councillor Berg, seconded by Councillor Neal, that bylaws 1 through 3 and 5 through 9 be given their first and second reading.
Please vote now. Carries.
So it's moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Scott, that Clause 11.34 of Bylaw 2010-1 be suspended for the purposes of giving Bylaw 5 3 readings.
Please vote. Carries.
It's moved by Councillor Osandic, seconded by Councillor Reitzel, that Bylaws 4 through 9 be given their third reading.
Please vote. Carries. Who wants to move motion to adjourn? Councillor George, seconded by Councillor Patterson, Deputy Mayor Patterson. And please vote on that. Okay, we're still waiting for one person to vote. Come on. There we go. Carries. Have a good night.
Montreal 2, Ottawa 0.